Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today in the studio, we have Steve Malanca. He is a co-founder of a movement called My Job Depends on Ag. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Every time I see the Facebook page or information about My Job Depends on Ag, I categorize it as a movement. And am I correct in that? Is it a movement?
I suppose, yeah. It's something we started 3 months ago to create some support for agriculture. So movement, I think, would be correct. So
Before we get into why this organization came about, let's talk a little bit about you. I understand you've been in the Valley for some time.
yeah, I'm third generation Fireball family. My grandfather on my father's side came over from Italy at the turn of the century. My father was also involved in agriculture out there. A couple of my brothers are as well, and I've been in the farm equipment business for 32 years now.
32 years.
Started when I was 28, long time.
You've seen some interesting things in the 38 years you've been in the industry. A lot of changes?
Oh boy, yeah, especially with water. The San Joaquin Valley, I've been blessed to be able to work on the western Fresno County farming area from Huron up into Merced County around Los Banos. And truly, I think it's just one of the most marvelous farming regions anywhere. The crops we grow are second to none, and the people are just fantastic out there working hard and growing our food for us here. And in 30 years, there wasn't many permanent crops out there. We typically were row crop people with cotton and grain and alfalfa and cantaloupes, Fireball being the cantaloupe capital of the world, and Mendota. And in the last 20 years, the markets have changed, and trees have become a big popular thing, nut trees specifically, where almonds and pistachios and walnuts have really driven the market in a different direction.
So when it comes to trees, every time we hear about almonds, but there are other stuff out there. I mean, you know, you mentioned pistachios and walnuts, so it's not necessarily just the almond that's driving the tree nut crop.
Yeah, truly. Less than 15% of all the farm ground in California is in almond trees. So that gives you the diversity that we have here in the state. And there's so many different other crops. Almonds have been in the forefront here lately with people sharing the amount of water it takes to grow an almond, but it's true that anything we grow certainly takes water. So almond has been on the forefront. We're trying to protect that image that they have.
Almond is getting beat up these days. I mean,
sure
is it
is.
fair for me to say that?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. People have come out and talked about what it takes a gallon of water to make an almond, and we're finding out it's close to a half a gallon to a gallon, but the return you get is a wonderful protein that we eat, and there's many other crops out there that take more water than what we're farming with in the almond orchards. A comparison that we've brought up of late to kind of give people an idea how much water is being used by farmers is we compare with the urban use of water compared to our farmers out on the west side and up and down the state. In a subdivision, in a typical city up and down the state, we have 6 homes per acre is a typical size lot for standard developments, and a family of 4 typically uses an acre-foot of water in a year. And so if you have 6 families in that acre in the city, that's 6 acre-feet per acre that's being consumed by us here in the city in an average. And most of the crops that we grow here in the state rely on less water than that. Trees, maybe 4 acre-feet, but I know some guys that are growing cotton on 2 acre-feet, and a lot of it is 3 acre-feet. So it's not as much water as people believe is what's being consumed for our crops here in the state.
Now, you mentioned you're from Firebaugh. Where's Firebaugh in relation to where we are in downtown Fresno?
Firebaugh is in western Fresno County. It's due west of Fresno, probably about 40 miles, and another 18 miles you'll hit Interstate 5. But in western Fresno County, there's Firebaugh, and south of there is Mendota, and then you get down to Interstate 5 on Highway 33 to Cantua Creek. So.
And I've been out to the Mendota Firebaugh area. You know, there's a lot of dry acreage out there. So is there property that's not being farmed right now?
Quite a bit, quite a bit. Our surface irrigation deliveries in Central California have been, on the west side, have been limited probably for the last 20 years, and more so in the last 2 to 5 years, where on a year like this year, they have zero allocation. Last year, it was less than 10%. And so in order to survive, we see our customers out drilling wells up and down the Central Valley from Bakersfield up to Stockton, for that matter, and even north of Stockton. So with the shortage of surface irrigation deliveries in the state, we're having to pump water out from below us, and that's not sustainable. So more storage is what we need as far as the farming community is concerned, to hold water back on dry years such as now, to have it available to farm with. So we're a big advocate for additional storage in the state, and there's things that we would like to see done, like raising Shasta Dam up in Northern California. That structure was built where today it can be added 200 more feet to make the thing much larger. And there's nothing like that in the plans right now, but there is talk about raising it 18 feet. And there's a few other dams in the valley that are also available to raise for additional storage. So we're hoping something like that can happen sooner than later, because the clock's ticking. We're not sure how much longer we can sustain farming here in Central Valley with the lack of surface irrigation deliveries.
And that's a scary thought. I mean, if I'm hearing you right, we're in a dangerous situation right now with farming in the valley, which is our #1 industry.
Yeah. It's hard for people to imagine going to a grocery store and seeing all the food you want and at the price it is. And that's the way it's been set up since the beginning, since the Depression. Farm subsidies were put in place to help people afford food. And yeah, we're right now with the lack of water, you're seeing a lot of idle ground, and a lot of the row crops have been taken away in favor of the tree fruit that a lot of people are growing and that the market is demanding for. So there's a big change going on.
Now, a lot of people don't understand all of the work it takes to actually run a farm. Now, you're in the equipment business, so tell us, other than a tractor, what else are you selling, or what else is a popular item at your place of employment?
Well, California has got 200 different crops, and it's hard to have all the equipment for all the crops. So some dealers specialize in some items and some do others. The company I work for at Max Equipment in Kerman, we specialize in vineyard and orchard equipment, and we handle a lot of the smaller tractors to deal with orchards and vineyards. You need a small tractor to get in between the vines and below the trees. And with that, we handle some harvesting equipment for the almonds. We also handle the sprayers that you need for spraying the almonds. And then we handle a Northwest rototiller that they use for working the soil.
Wow.
And we have discs that you have to use the soil as well. And in the vineyards, we have dusting machines. There's a process during the growth of the vines where you have to keep the mildew off, so they're constantly dusting them with sulfur. We provide sulfuring machines. And a lot of little tillage equipment like discs and plows and things.
So it's not just simple as planting a tree, putting water on the tree, and a couple of years later reaping the benefits?
Right. You know, I can share with you a story that we did in the fall of 2013 to try to create a visual for people that aren't familiar with ag, and we picked a crop. Out of the 200, we picked alfalfa. And what we did in an alfalfa field in Fireball is we invited all the different pieces of equipment to come back in the field on the same day and show us how many different pieces of equipment it takes to generate a bale of alfalfa from the time the field was dirt. And when it's dirt, there's nothing there, so you have to have discs to come in and work the ground, and then you have to have irrigation systems to come in to provide the water, and then you have to have seeding companies to come in and provide the seed. Once the seed's up, then you need a fertilizer to come in and apply the fertilizer in order for the seed to grow. And then in that field, we had all the equipment it took to cut it. You had a cutter come in, and then you had a rake come in, and then you had a baler come in. And after the baling was done, then you had the truck that came in and picked up the bales. And then the bales went on to the dairy, and where they were unloaded at the dairy for the cows to eat. So we had farm equipment dealers such as ourselves out there, car dealerships that sell the pickups to the farmer. You have insurance companies that provided the insurance to all the vehicles, petroleum companies to provide the diesel for all the different pieces of equipment, and you could just extrapolate and go on, and pretty much everybody's job depends on ag.
Well, and when I heard about this movement, My Job Depends on Ag, one of the first people I thought of, not just the farmers, but as you drive out to some of the smaller communities, there are always like a little cafe or a little liquor store or a little, family-run restaurant. And I think, what would happen if farming would cease in this area? Those little businesses would disappear. Is that true assessment?
It's happening now. If you can drive to any farming community here in the valley and ask them about just what you said and what's happening to their businesses, and we're actually seeing an exodus of farm workers leaving the valley because there's no work. We're hearing that they're moving north to Oregon and Washington and even into Canada. There has been reports of a couple of fields that were ready for harvest that were walked away from because the labor wasn't there to pick the crop.
Wow.
And that's happening now. Talking to some people down in the South Valley on the east side that have mini marts that do business with farm workers on a constant basis. Their businesses have been off as much as 40% in the last 2 years. They've reported to me when they saw my decal and found out what our movement was about. I talking to him, and I asked him for a report. In fact, he said that what we're saying is true. They're leaving, and the work's going to be hard to find. And I have to give a shout out to the migrant farm workers that come up here and do all this hard work in the valley for us, because without them, I'm not sure how that crop would be harvested. They're hardworking people, and without them, it would be a tough task.
So My Job Depends on Ag. How did it start? What is it, and how did it start?
Well, being passionate about agriculture and out there my whole life, we made this video a couple years ago, and it got a little traction. It's on YouTube, and if you look up Farm Water and the Business Crisis, you can see this video that we came about in this alfalfa field. And it got a little traction, and it kind of fizzled out. And about 4 months ago, I had a vision and creating a decal to create a symbol to show people that aren't involved in ag how many jobs are affected by agriculture, as I've mentioned. And so I'm sorry I didn't bring one today, but it's an image of California. It's green for the color of ag. And across the state of California, it says, "My job depends on ag." And I made a couple hundred of them at my own expense in early May, and went back out on the west side and asked if some of my constituents would be willing to present this decal and show it and be proud that we're in agriculture, and let people know that there are a lot of jobs that are affected by it. And I got a great response right out of the gate. I sold 200 of them in about 3 days.
Wow, congratulations.
Unbelievable. And people were really receptive to my idea. And what really took it off was a friend of mine, Eric Wilson, who's got a spray applicator in Dos Palace. He's been an advocate for ag and passionate about it as I've been, and he asked me about putting it on Facebook. And he said, let's make a Facebook page, My Job Depends on Ag, and ask people that if you have a job depending on agriculture, to take a picture of it, show us where you are, and tell us what you do. And within a matter of 3 weeks, we had 10,000 likes.
And that is incredible, because I've been on the Facebook page and I saw so many likes, and when you just said 4 months ago, I thought, this is incredible that in 4 months they've got tens of thousands of likes, so congratulations.
Oh, it's wonderful. We just hit 40,000. We're now making decals for other states. We're up to about maybe 12 or 14 more different states that we're offering the same logo, My Job Depends on Ag. We've been contacted by some farmers in Australia that would like us to use the continent of Australia on the decal and say the same slogan, My Job Depends on Ag. And they have some issues that they're dealing with down there, and they think that that's also a great way to present themselves in ag. And the guy emailed Eric the other day, and he's ready to fly here and talk to us and see what we could do to get set up.
So, but how is it something that is helping you generate revenue? I mean, it's more of a movement, but how can, for the work that you're putting in, what's the reward?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. We are making a little profit on the decals, not much. And when it first started, and Eric and I realized that we're going to sell some decals, and I'm happy to report that 3.5 months into this thing, we've sold about 14,000 of them.
That is incredible.
That's a bunch. And so early on, we discussed that this isn't our money. We need to do something constructive with it for agriculture. And so we, not knowing how big this thing was going to grow, decided to start with all of the local high schools in western Fresno County, Merced County, and down to Kings County. We thought that we would provide some scholarships for kids graduating from high school, going into college, majoring in ag. We picked a $500 denomination and have had contact with the Fresno County Board of Education to find out how we can disperse this money. And we're looking into that right now, and we're going to come through with our promise and offer some scholarships very soon.
So it's not for monetary gain.
Nope.
It's for passion. And you know, you work full time, and so do other people of this group that kind of runs this movement.
Yeah.
You know, everybody works, and this is kind of something you do on the side. I mean, why? It's easy for you to do so many other things. Why this?
You said it best. It's the passion. Truly, people have no clue about the desperation we are in farming in Central California right now. In simple terms, when people that aren't familiar with what's going on, I try to lay it out in very simple terms, and I usually say it like this, that this goofy state we live in, all the snowpack and the rainfall is in the northern third of the state. In the center third of the state, it's agriculture. And in the southern third of the state, you got 25 million people. And so the needs for water in this state, with the environmental concerns that are at the forefront, it's a huge task. And family's been in farming and forever, and I'm just one of these guys from out in the country that love what I do, and we're hoping to let people know that we're going to need some help, especially at the polls when election time comes next year.
Talk a little bit about the major problem is water. Is it because not enough rain and not enough storage, or walk us through what you think the major issue is?
We have a wonderful system called the Central Valley Project here in California that was built in the 60s with the help of Bernie Sisk and President Kennedy and the Bureau of Reclamation in those days. They saw the opportunity in Central California to feed the world, and we live in a wonderful climate here. It's desert-like, but it's not desert. We have snow from the mountains and rivers, and if we capture that water properly, I believe that there is enough to take care of the environmental concerns, the ag concerns, and the urban city folks for water. And today, right now, the misconception is that farmers are using 80% of the water that's available in California. And if you break that down further, it actually is about 40%.
So if we have 100% of water, the farmers are only using 40?
Yes, yes. The environmental concerns and the laws that they've put in place with the Endangered Species Act and others require 50% of the water available to accommodate those rules and regulations at this time.
So 50 plus 40 is 90. What about the other 10?
That's what we drink with here in the town of Fresno and other cities throughout the state. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, the breakdown is so much more interesting the way you present it, because in the media you would always think agriculture is drinking up all the water.
Yeah. And I'm not a professional on this, and this isn't what I study every day, so I believe I've got most of my facts right, but the state asking those of us in the cities to quit watering our lawns and to save our water from our showers is only at 10% of the total water that we're being used. And we feel that if the water was distributed properly and stored properly, that these actions may not be necessary. Even the people in Porterville right now are having water brought into them to drink because of what's going on in Sacramento. So we hope we can bring that awareness out to people. Our Facebook page, My Job Depends on Ag, was created to educate people, to show them where their foods come from. We'd like to make learning about ag a cool thing again, and we're inviting people, especially those that aren't in agriculture, to come and look and see all the different jobs that it takes to bring that food to the grocery store. And we're also talking about where the water's going here, and it's scary. We're not, there's not much available for farming anymore. So.
You mentioned Porterville, so there are communities that right now don't have any water.
None.
So, I mean, they're trucking in water for showering and for drinking?
And bottled water for drinking, that's right.
So isn't it interesting? I mean, some of us may take the water for granted sometimes, and here we are, we have total communities that don't have any water.
Yeah, it's a shame that it has to be that way, and those of us in ag think that if global warming is truly a fact, and that we all need to prepare for global warming, and there may be a time where these rain patterns are non-existent for a while, we feel in our industry that planning ahead for something like that might mean to build a few dams and store a little water for those years that it's not available, such as right now. And we also hope that that the water is distributed equally for everybody. We're playing by some different rules here in Central California right now, with the need to flush out the delta with salt intrusion and with treated sewage that's being dumped in there. Most of the water being used to help that delta is being pulled from our region, and that other regions like the San Francisco Bay Area that receives their water from Hetch Hetchy, which is a dam in our national park, it's being piped 200 miles over to San Francisco around the delta, and their dam is full right now, and they're not having to use that water as we are with ours to do any flushing of the delta out. Los Angeles right now has got water for 2 years. The dam going over the Grapevine is full at Pyramid Lake, and then they also have another dam in the southeastern part of the Los Angeles basin that's got quite a bit of water in it. So we're kind of bringing to that attention too, thinking that if everybody should play by the same rules.
So if I look at California as a whole, in your opinion, who's got it the worst when it comes to water?
Without a question, it's us here in Central California, without a doubt.
Interesting.
without a doubt.
So how can, I mean, what is it that you need from the audience members? We're running out of time this week on the program, but, you know, go to the website, go to the Facebook page, and what else? What are you looking for our audience members to do?
Yes, the website and the Facebook page is going to educate people. We want people to understand how their food is grown. The other message that we're going to take is we're not a political action group. We don't, there's people who have tried to talk about GMOs and Agenda 21 and some of these other heavy topics, and we're not into that on our page. We just want to educate, especially those that aren't familiar with ag. But I think the message that we're going to start now between now and next year is voting. The elections are coming up, and the people that in this region, in order to help ourselves with our economy, we're going to need to vote and vote for the right people that are going to help us. We're actually talking amongst ourselves right now that your vote does count. We don't feel that it's such a lopsided state to where our vote doesn't count, and we want to get that point across to people. In precincts and local elections during the primary, the margin of victory is nominal. And so we think that if our Facebook page grows and our website grows, we can educate people and let them know that they have to go vote in order to change things here in the state.
On that note, we are out of time this week on the program, but thank you so much for coming on here and telling us about this movement. My job depends on ag.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To our guest, Steve Malanca, thank you so much for coming on the program again.
Thank you.
To our volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible, thank you. We couldn't do it without you. To our audience members listening to this broadcast on 90.7 FM, KFSR Fresno, and watching this program on the CMAC channel, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found this program educational and learning about this movement called My Job Depends on Ag. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.